Should Ohio State snag a running back out of the transfer portal?
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes here on Wednesday, December 13th in the year 2023. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. During today's show, once again, he's been here a lot throughout the season, and he's here with us as we kick off the offseason here on Locked On Buckeyes. It's my guy, Jeff Hunt of the Jeff Needs Sports Podcast. It was in maybe hibernation mode. It's out of that mode right now. Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Hey, it's great to be back. Hey, thanks for the shout out, man. Hibernation mode is great. So all I did for a year off was, do a couple shows a week, several with you and several with Locked On Buckeyes. But it's always a pleasure to be here. And what was cool when you brought up these subjects, and just before we get started here, it's awesome that college football has an off season now. And what I mean by that is never before has there been so much buzz to fill the time between the bowl games and between the championship games and between the spring games. And it used to always be about all these unknown, kids out of high school coming in and what are we going to have and what are we going to do and who's going to go pro. And now it's you get a month of, for lack of a better term, it's free agency. And it's pretty wild to see, and all the speculation, the rumors. I go to work every day and we've got a traditional time clock. I mean, it's digital, but everybody lines up. They're all gathered around a time clock. I walk in every day and I've got 3 to 4 people that have a question about, We talk about Ohio State. We talk about who's coming. We talk about what they're going to do in the portal. And this is December, man. This is fantastic. I mean, it's just interesting if you're a college football fan like us.
Well, one of those questions that might come to you when you're at the time clock and as you're kind of starting your day, should Ohio State snag a running back out of the transfer portal? And Jeff, this isn't a question that I think would be a realistic one to ask 5 years ago. The portal was a thing. Guys are transferring, not the same rate they are now, but the portal was definitely a thing and an avenue for players to move around in the sport. But I think right now, especially with the way Ohio State's running back room is, that might be a question. Should the Buckeyes snag a running back out of the portal?
Yeah, it's a running back closet at this point. Not a lot of depth in it. We've had 3 guys leave, 2 transfers, 1 going pro. Wish all the guys, good luck or whatever. But it might even be thinner. We're banking that Henderson's coming back. I think Buckeye Nation kind of feels like Henderson is coming back, which is great. To me, I think that's the right thing to do for him in every direction. But we're just assuming that. Outside of that, I mean, Hayden, has done some great things and pulled some good moments. But you got to have a group of running backs in college football. Very few teams just have. Oklahoma State, had a dude. You know what I mean? Some teams, even Michigan, one of the best running teams in the country, has more than one guy. You know what I mean? It's very hard to do that. So it's we can't go into a season and expect Henderson to be a workhorse running back. That's never what he's been.
Right.
And like we said before the show, you got to go get some different types of talent. You got to get some scat backs. You might want to go get a big hoss to fill the Miyan Williams role and the Chip Trayanum role that won the Notre Dame game for us, some stuff like that. But what I like about the portal, before we get too deep into it, is you've got to see what some of these guys can do, and you've got to see what they want to do, and you've got to see how they fit on your team rather than hoping that a freshman, works out for you and that he develops the way he wants and that he has the attitude you want and all this. You really get a chance to talk to the coaches of these kids. You get to see what they've done on tape. You get to talk to them. They're a little more grown up, so you can have, a real serious conversation with them. So, if you're a team like Ohio State, I think if you're not looking in the portal, you're making a mistake.
I'm right there with you. I think every position, every offseason, you should be looking and figuring out if there's a way in the portal for you to go to that avenue, to acquire talent, to make your roster better. And Jeff, it may not be a starter. You could need a guy maybe in a Trey Sermon role a few years ago who came in last 2 raw 4 minutes collegiate career, But then once he got his feet under him and realized how to run with the Buckeyes offense, those last few games were phenomenal for him as a Buckeyes running back. Jeff, I definitely think Ohio State needs to go out there and get a running back in the portal. I understand that Henderson's there. People know that I'm higher on him now than I used to be. Hayden is there. I am definitely high on Dallin Hayden. I wish he would have gotten more touches this year. Yeah. I understand why they wanted to redshirt him. I definitely understand Ryan Day's thought process about that. But I definitely think you have to, because when I think about it, you lose 3 of your top 5 guys. Who do you have behind them? You have 3 freshmen coming in. That's great. I'm not mad about that. But I don't think Ryan Day wants to play a true freshman right away, even in a third-string role, because you just don't know. Ball security and pass pro are 2 things every running back has to work on, not just freshmen. Everybody in college football has to work on those 2 things. It's really hard for a freshman back to come in and be like, oh, I'm good at ball security. I can withstand these hits and hold on to the ball. But also, Jeff, it's really, really hard for a freshman to come in and understand pass pro, communication, working with an experienced offensive line. It's really hard to do that. So, yes, I definitely think the Buckeyes should go out and snag a running back in the portal. Maybe not a starter, because I don't think they need a starter at running back right now. They got 2 guys that can start easily for them tomorrow, but they need to go out there and get depth, experienced depth at that position.
Yeah, they need a guy that can come in, 7 times a game. And what I want is a couple things. I mean, I'm not scared to get a couple of them, but because what you said, the jump from high school to pro,
my goodness,
or not pro, but college, big time college. That's a big jump for a running back, because it's still
for some guys, it's kind of like pro, Jeff. For some guys, it's just like a pro jump. I know what you're saying.
No, 100%. It's a very physical position, and you got to know so much, especially in Ohio State with the pass protection, like you said. That's very key. It's so much to learn. And again, but what I'd also like to see is bring in a guy that is a threat out of the backfield. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be your stereotypical running back. It doesn't have to replace. If you want to replace a Miyan Williams with a Miyan Williams, that's great too. Like what we did with Trey Sermon. But if you want to bring in, 175-pound. A guy that runs 4.3 that scares people to death out of the backfield, that does the same thing, as long as it distracts the opposing defense. And I think one thing Ohio State's done is they've got a lot of really good athletes at running back, and they've done a fairly good job. I don't think we've seen this running game evolve like it did under Urban Meyer. That's a whole different show, that we've talked about it, a lot. I'm not exactly sure what the holdup is in the running game, because we know we've got athletes back there. It's ridiculous to think that. But let's get a guy that can just make his own space. You know what I mean? Let's get a guy that takes the pressure off of whoever the quarterback's going to be in 2024. And then also get a guy that I'm assuming it's going to be a 2 or 3 year guy that, is kind of just more mature, physically mature, mentally mature. He's seen a lot of things. And again, to reiterate, you can handpick the offense that he came from that fits your needs. You know what I mean? Don't go get a guy that played in a power I. Go get a guy that plays in a similar offense. And I guess another thing is get one that complements whoever the quarterback is going to be next year. McCord needed a certain type of running back. He needed more of a Miyan Williams, because there wasn't an RPO. There wasn't much of a threat out of the backfield. When Fields was there, I don't know if him and JK, if there was ever a better mix of a quarterback running back situation than it was with Fields and JK. So whatever quarterback you're bringing in, or starting next year, whoever that is, get a complementary running back that they work together. And again, I'm not even saying as a starter, but here's the thing, Jay. You and I both know they're going to start.
Yeah,
I mean, Henderson's not playing 13 games in a row next year. Assuming he comes back, we're still assuming he's coming back, and I don't expect him to at the running back position. Because when he's healthy, he's got a different gear and he's a different person. Bring in a guy that lets him take the time off he needs during games, instead of Day has been so bad about hey, this kind of going with the hot hand, and you're like what, Hayden's not playing this game, and Pryor never, because of injuries and stuff, you know what I mean? Though it's hey, we're going with the hot hand. We're just going to keep kind of just burying our head in the sand here, and let's get some mix out there. Let's bring a guy in that when he comes off the sidelines for one play is a factor.
Jeff, you made a comment about Henderson here, and I want to kind of touch on that on the next segment of the show about how a running back bringing in the right guy can help Henderson be the best back he can be in the upcoming season. It's coming at you next on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 moneyline bet. It's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. And those of you that are looking to make some money on Ohio State's next football game, right now the Buckeyes are plus 2.5 in their Cotton Bowl matchup against Missouri, and the over-under is set at 48.5. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Jeff, it's kind of weird that I'm here with you again. We have had numerous conversations about Trayanum Henderson and how we kind of view him as a running back last year, the year before. This year, my mind kind of shifted, but I didn't really think about going to the portal and bringing in a running back that complements him very well, his playing style, and a guy that might be a backup, but realizing, hey, there's a realistic opportunity for me to not just be a third string or second string guy, but to realistically be a starter or a backup due to the injury history of Trayanum Henderson. I think you and I would both, first off, say we don't want him to get hurt. Like, I don't like watching him out there and getting hurt. Like, it's not fun. But if it happens, you got to have guys in your room that can help replace him when he's not able to be out there on the field. I don't think you want to bring in a speed guy or someone who's as explosive or close to being as explosive as Henderson. That might not complement the offense or him very well. But bringing a guy in that's a little bit shiftier or a little bit different of a running back style might be what the Buckeyes need to help the offense be a well-oiled machine next season.
Yeah, and exactly. And it's one of those things too. It's like if Henderson's going to be kind enough to come back next year, because you very seldom get a guy this talented to come back for his fourth year. It would be amazing. I don't even expect him to want to play every game. I don't even expect him to want to play every down. We need him in, November and December. Like, that's just the truth of it. And this year, it really did help having him healthy, later in the year than it did, I think, the year before. It really hurt. And especially in 2 years before, it really hurt. So it's like, and bring in a guy that understands the role. Like, he's here, like, hey, I'm here to get 500 yards rushing, 25 catches. If things go right, I might wind up with 10 touchdowns accidentally as a Buckeye because of some of the games that they put up, and be happy with that. And if he's like, if you get a guy that comes there and he's like, okay, I want a chance to win. Like, maybe he's from a program that he's played really good at, but had no chance to go to the playoffs. Or if you bring a guy that's like, hey, I got one shot to maybe make the NFL. I need to showcase myself. I know everybody's watching. If I make 3 or 4 big plays, I might get drafted. Either whatever this imaginary person's motives are, that's also fine in today's game. We don't need a guy to come in and act, try to be an All-American, and it's great if he wants to. But as far as Henderson goes, like, he's good. Like, Henderson's like, he knows he's real. I don't think he's trying to break any records at Ohio State. That ship's kind of sailed. Yeah. I really think the guy wants to win some big games, and of course the big game if he comes back. And I'm happy. Whatever keep him healthy doing that. But again, when he comes in, I need the quarterback to be like, all right, this guy's in. It's great. We're good to go. Dobbins and Weber, they found that blend a few years ago, and it worked out, wonderful for Ohio State. So again, bring a guy in that knows exactly what his role is, knows who he is as a person and as a player. I think sometimes Ohio State, especially when you're dealing with freshmen or 5 stars or whatever, sometimes you get a little confused on that. And it's nobody's fault. You know what I mean? If a kid thinks he's a 2,000-yard back and he's not getting playing time, I do not blame him for thinking it should be one way. Bring a guy in that knows what's up. You know what I mean? Sermon's the best example of that we've ever had. And look how it worked out really good.
Jeff, so before I go into this next little thought in my head, it sounds like you're wanting a more experienced running back to come in from the portal, not somebody that's more a freshman or redshirt freshman that's not really experienced in the sport.
Yep. I want a guy to help the quarterback, help the offensive line, help the other running backs. Like, that's the guy I want. I want maybe there could be a a redshirt. I want basically a third or fourth year guy that
Right.
knows what's up. I want him to have played in a good program with good coaches. I don't care what the record was. Like, I don't care if he's from Virginia Tech or Pitt or, I just want him to have played under like good coaches and be able to accept good coaches and bring, that maturity with him. And really just be like, just be like in the NFL, you would call it a veteran presence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that would be the biggest thing because Henderson's getting there and he may be that guy next year. But again, we're not expecting, a workhorse back from him. I need a guy when he comes into the huddle, it's like, it's 3rd and 5. I know you're going to be open, or if I hand it to you, I know you're going to do these weird little things, Imagine a guy like, I know he's not going to be this good, but imagine like how Edwards-Helaire did for LSU in that magical year. It's like he did it. Najee Harris actually at Alabama was a little like, it's just like, we're just kind of stuck. Like, let's figure this out. Like, it just has to be a guy with that mentality of like, the best I ever saw was in the pros, Kevin Falk out of LSU, went to the New England Patriots, the best third down back I ever saw in my life. To me, he's a Hall of Fame career just based on what he could do on third down and the pass in the run game. Like a guy like that. I know I'm asking for perfection, but I think if you're Ohio State, and it's crazy not to talk about NIL money that you can come up with, I think that guy, he can definitely be available. Like, you just want a guy that's like, 12-team playoff next year. Like, you're crazy if you think guys don't want to go to Ohio State and have a pretty good feeling they can make a 12-team playoff. Like, nothing's guaranteed, but like, that's there's about 8 teams that you can go to and feel really good about making the playoffs next year. So that really puts Ohio State in a good position, and they've got production out of the running back. I mean, they know what it looks like when this offense is rolling. Like, again, you might steal 10 touchdowns in 4 games, but your stats are going to be there. So I think it's a pretty good situation for a running back to dip in and have a good season and maybe even get himself drafted to the NFL and snag, a Reichert, a Ford truck along the way. So I think it's a good landing spot for a guy that wants to win.
That New England Patriots type of conversation you brought into here is great because the Patriots did something with a guy named Corey Dillon. A lot of guys didn't like him. Some people had questions about him. Bill Belichick found a way to utilize that talent in a great way. And you talk about Kevin Falk, I'm a Colts fan. I couldn't stand playing that team. It wasn't just because of the defense, that 3-4 that they ran that Peyton Manning could never figure out. I couldn't stand that it didn't matter who the running back was. It was a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, the OC on the field, didn't matter who the back was, Kevin Falk, and Corey Dillon was so good in New England. People were complaining about Randy Moss. Is he done? Randy Moss goes to New England, does phenomenal. Now that's a Hall of Fame talent. It's a Hall of Fame player. Don't get me wrong, but Randy Moss, and he conformed to the Patriot way and set a record while doing so. Now, I'm not saying that somebody needs to come in and be expected to immediately set a record at Ohio State. I'm not saying that. All I am saying is this: if you get an experienced guy that also conforms to the Buckeye way, as Ryan Day's still trying to figure out this running back room and with the type of playing style he wants in the running backs, let's say everything comes together this year, that'd be a perfect mix. I say all that, Jeff, and I'm sitting here thinking like, man, the Buckeyes really miss Kevin Wilson because the running game was always better when he was in Columbus.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know what's going on. It feels like there's always confusion exactly what the goal is, with the offensive lineman and the running game. And it's a lot of it's like, there's so many factors at work here. Like, you can't run an RPO if your quarterback doesn't run. That's not an RPO anymore. It's just a slow running game. They refuse to really commit to a pistol that we've talked about for years.
Yes.
They there's times where they could probably just go to a pro formation, and they don't do that. They still running everything out of the shotgun. But again, if your quarterback's not a threat, this just isn't McCord. Stroud wasn't a threat either, for whatever reason. It's no secret then, when Dobbins and Fields were together, like, it made Dobbins' life a lot easier too, and Fields' life a lot easier too, which, again, Kevin Wilson, great, but it's nice to have tools. So they definitely need, that's a whole different show of like, what's your plan? Like, what's your game plan for this offense? Because right now we're not, we're wasting running back talent rather than getting the most out. You can't tell me that, Henderson, if he plays, wherever, like at one of these Georgia, for instance, just throwing Georgia, like he's every bit the running back that, they run through there the last few years, and, it could be doing the same stuff. So you definitely got to figure out something else. You got to figure out something on the second level, whether it's offensive line, whether it's a scheme problem. You got to start getting these running backs into some more space and giving them a chance to do something. And, so that is something different. And again, maybe you bring a running back in that's got the experience with another coach, and can possibly contribute to the running game. I mean, I granted, I'm grasping at straws here, but I've already stated it. Like, I think that all the resources are there to grab a kid like that. Now, I haven't went through the portal. I would kind of go through the portal every day and see who's in it. They're going to have so many more guys coming out, after their bowl games and stuff, that no reason to speculate who's available right now. But it's also crazy to think that there's not discussions being had.
Jeff, one thing we haven't touched on is how pulling somebody in from the portal impacts the current players inside the running back room. Well, that's coming at you next on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Jeff, this impact on this room could be drastic. It could be huge. And I'm first in my head thinking, before the portal thought, I'm also wondering, how does this impact Dallin Hayden if Travion Henderson decides to stay at Ohio State? Then you add in the transfer portal and how, if they both stay in the running back room in Columbus, how does bringing in one or maybe even two running backs? I never thought about two, Jeff. But let's say they do bring in two guys. One guy more experienced, one guy younger, been in college football for a couple of years, but hasn't really made his mark and cemented his spot on a team. So you bring in two guys. One guy impacts the room in a big way. Two guys not only impacts the experienced guys, the vets, but it also impacts those incoming freshmen.
And another thing we haven't really talked about is a couple things here. Hayden is the most affected here because I think we feel he's really talented. I think we feel he's kind of earned, to be the next guy, and we believe in him. So he's extremely affected by like what type of running back they bring in. Another thing that we haven't talked about, bringing in a certain kind of guy could push Henderson out. Like, does Henderson say, I'm going to go ahead and go pro, I'm not going to deal with this? I don't think that they're going to get that kind of blockbuster guy, but I don't know. But the way I look at it from the football standpoint is like, if I'm Hayden, I'm like, what we did last year didn't work. What we did the year before didn't work. Like, if we're not staying on the field, like I'm not going to be out there. Like, if we can get a guy that can help me, help us keep possessions and get more, time and getting leads, and then you're running the ball more. Like, if you look at it in the big picture, a full running back room, helps out, assuming you bring in somebody that, even no matter how talented they are, is unselfish. I do feel for, Hayden, but that's one of the problems that these massive programs have now, is they really have to like toe the line of like, I know we brought you in, I know how good you were, but we also we can't risk everything hoping that you're going to be the guy when this guy's sitting here. A lot of schools don't have to deal with that. A lot of guys, you bring in portal guys because you don't have the talent. It's weird for the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States. They're bringing in talent and stacking it on top of talent. It makes the team better, but especially at the running back position, it's kind of weird. I can totally see why they would be like, well, there's no reason for me to be here. We've already seen it, like I said, we've lost two running backs. Like Trayanum I don't know why Trayanum left, but like, obviously there's not much meat on the bone left, by the time we get down to this point. But it is delicate situation. You don't want to lose a guy like Hayden or Henderson because you bring in a different guy. But I suppose you have to include them in the conversation.
Jeff, I'm going to touch on that Chip Trayanum thing here really quickly. And I'm going to say this before I get into too deep into it. This is no inside source. This is just Jay's thought in my head. I wonder if they know internally what Henderson's decision is or what he's leaning towards. Because Pryor going to the portal, I think first, kind of made me see something where maybe he's not going to be the backup next year, which may be lean more towards Henderson staying. And then Chip Trayanum leaving, which is a different thing, because he really came here to be a linebacker, went to the running back room because they needed him to out of necessity.
Yeah.
I wonder if he knows internally Henderson is maybe leaning towards staying, or they know he's staying, but they're just letting him announce it when he wants to. I don't know where Henderson is leaning. I don't know Chip Trayanum's exact reason for transferring, but I can understand why a guy wants to. He's in his last year of eligibility next year, wants to play football somewhere, maybe linebacker, maybe running back. I don't know where he wants to play, but he wants to play. And if he stays at Ohio State, if he goes back to linebacker, I don't think he's going to start at linebacker. If he stays at running back, I don't think he'll start at running back. As talented as he is, it's not a lack of talent. I don't think the Buckeyes have ever viewed him as a guy at RB1 week after week after week after week if everybody's healthy. So I understand why he's leaving. This is one of those things at the portal, Jeff. Like when the portal first came out, I was not viewing it the way that I view it now. Bro, if you can go out there, play the next year immediately, not lose any years of eligibility like the old school rule, and go out there and make an impact on another football team, so be it. Like, I'm not mad at you for doing that, to utilize the rules in your favor to help you accomplish a goal that you have in college football. And so I'm glad, really, Jeff, that I'm thinking with a different mindset.
No, I like it.
Because if I didn't, I'd be upset that Chip's leaving. I'd be upset that Evan Pryor's leaving. Even Miyan Williams, like, I mean, I may not totally agree with the decision to go to the NFL, buddy, I understand it. I understand why you do it. And so I think it's just maybe growth in Jay's mind. I don't know, Jeff, but my transformation in my mindset of the portal helps me understand, and maybe those some realistic opportunities and ideas out there about why Chip Trayanum went to the portal.
And there's another thing too that we'll factor in. I think these guys are all assuming a new type of quarterback is coming in.
Yeah.
And if things go well, there's going to be less runs to be had. A lot of the running game this year was kind of forced. It was like, okay, let's just try to do this and get out of here alive, as opposed to when things are clicking with this offense and the quarterback's clicking. There's not a lot of scraps left over for the running back. So like you can only have so many. So I think that might be part of it too. Like if things are going good with the offense, like there's not really a spot for a Chip Trayanum in it. It has nothing to do with him. I appreciate everything he did at Ohio State, but I can totally see why he would be like, what's going to be left for me next year? If all these wide receivers are getting theirs, and let's say we're back to a little more what we've expected out of the last like 6 or 7 years, what's really left for your downhill back? Not that he'd probably get 5 touchdowns and 200 yards, but it's like, you may just not need it. We're hoping. I think that's kind of what we're all hoping. So I think that's got to factor in also. I don't know. Like, I wish you could be inside the room to hear the conversations, but yeah. I like what you're saying is like, these players aren't doing all this on their own. Like right. They're not just coming up with this in their dorm room and not talking to Coach Day. Program's way too big. Everybody's way too involved for that. They have a hint of what the future is. I think you're dead on with that.
Jeff, it's fun having you on the show for a couple of days discussing the quarterbacks and the running backs and the portal and Day. And I threw a Kevin Wilson in there. And man, I didn't think it was going to come out, but I truly have a thought that the Buckeyes missed Kevin Wilson. That might be a show Jeff and I do down the road. You can follow Jeff on X, formerly known as Twitter, at jhunt006. You can follow me on the same platform at jsteven07. Check out the Jeff Needs Sports podcast. Lately, I've been hearing him and Mo Murphy, who's also a contributor of this show, do some great work there. College football conversations. Mo, I love Mo's energy. I'm getting feedback about Mo here on this show. And I remember Mo doing the final show before conference championship games are played. I'm like, Mo, you're right on there. You're right
he's
on there.
Dialed in.
I love it. I love it, man. Love having Jeff on. We'll get Mo back on down the road. And guys, this has been Locked on Buckeyes here on a Wednesday. We'll see you next time.